Hello, my loyal listeners. Thanks so much for supporting the podcast. This experiment is turning into a much bigger success than I could have imagined. That's thanks to you. So please keep on subscribing and sharing. My goal is 1,000 downloads by Remembrance Day. Since this podcast is actually getting downloaded, guess what? Businesses actually want to pay me to advertise for them. Who would have thought? So I'm proud to be sponsored by Boris, who happens to be a great buddy of mine and an up-and-coming jiu-jitsu champ, and his company, Be Air. If you live in or around the West Island of Montreal and your house felt like a Russian sauna last year, give him a call. Boris will hook you up with the best AC unit, all professionally installed and done with the highest level of customer care on the market today. That's no bullshit either. He's installed at my house. Check him out on Facebook at Be Air. That's capital B, period, Air, A-I-R. Or go to his website at www.montrealfurnacefilters.com. He's also a proud Army veteran and brings that work ethic and pride to work every day and refuses to let any of his clients down. I'm also honored to be sponsored by the best real estate agent on the market, Stéphane Leroux. You've got a house that needs to be sold? Get a hold of Steve. I can assure you, because he's my agent as well, he goes the extra mile. Every time I see a post from him, he's getting over 100% of the seller's asking price. That's crazy. If you're in the Montreal area, give this guy a call, and you can head to his website, www.stephaneleroux.com. That's S-T-E-P-H-A-N Leroux, L-E-R-O-U-X.com, and book an appointment. Did I mention he's also a decorated member of the Canadian Armed Forces? He knows exactly the needs and concerns of our community when getting posted. So make sure to give him a shout. So get out there and support your veteran-owned businesses. Leadership. Every organization wants the best leaders, doesn't it? But how do most go about ensuring that this is the case? I know after 15 years in the Canadian Forces as a senior NCO and eventually junior officer, that leaders need to be trained and mentored continuously. I would argue that the Canadian Forces produces Canada's best leaders just based on the sheer volume of training and practice each one of us gets. This podcast is a recording of a talk I did at the annual Dominos Pizza Canada Rally, where I discussed my experiences as a leader in the CF and how my lessons learned could help young leaders improve their franchises. Don't forget to subscribe and share your comment on Apple iTunes, and make sure to share your favorite episode of the Hard to Kill podcast with a friend. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the Hard to Kill podcast, the go-to podcast for military, LEO, and EMS professionals, sharing ideas and experiences from around the world to make you hard to kill. Here's your host, Dave Morrow.
All right, before we get started, okay, we've got audio. This is good. Guys, I come from the military, so you have to understand, nothing ever works. So the fact that my mic is working, I have a screen in front of me, is like we're at 100% efficiency right now. So it's just really good to be here, and I really appreciate the invitation by Steve and from Dominos to I guess, put me up on stage and have my opportunity to kind of explain and just give you some of the context of what I experienced over a 15-year career in the Canadian Armed Forces and as a leader. And so I also want to thank my wife as well, who's obviously not here because she's very pregnant. And not like going to give birth tomorrow. Like, we're still talking like 2 months off, but she's very pregnant, and our 2.5-year-old's running around, without me there to kind of corral them. So I have to give thanks where thanks is due. So I had a few conversations last night, and if Dean's here, Dean, we had a really good conversation. I'm going to touch base on something that Dean said last night as well, but also to touch on what Mike had to say. I don't know if Mike's in the room, but holy shit! Wow, okay, I feel so much more at ease. He was dropping F-bombs and shit, and I was like, yeah, okay, now I'm in my element. If we had to work together back in the day, man, we would have conquered the planet. He's the exact type of guy that I really get fired up with, and the whole idea of like, no, inefficient. We got to cut it out. Love it. So it's cool to see that, you know, these leadership skills and these leadership attributes, they transfer. Just because I did 15 years in the Army and in the infantry doesn't mean that we don't have the same leadership styles in corporations. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's start learning a little about me and what I have to offer with respects to leadership from my experience. So let's make sure that this works. All right. That was my one big concern, actually, that wasn't going to work. Okay, so here's just a little bit about me. So like I said, I spent 15 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was a reservist, and I was a member of the Canadian Grenadier Guards. So the regiment that Steve just mentioned that we have a mutual friend in, that's a reserve infantry unit on the island of Montreal. And I joined when I was 19. So if I seem a bit young, well, it's because I spent 15 years as, I know I've been out for a few years since, so you join when you're quite young. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010. So that was kind of like the highlight. That was like my pinnacle of my career, and I'll get more into my Afghanistan tour as we progress through the presentation. During that tour, I was awarded the Order of the Combat Spur because I was deployed with an American regiment, or an American unit, and that's for meritorious service in front of an armed enemy. So I'm one of the few Canadians to have earned that. Additionally, Lieutenant Colonel Commendation for leadership, 0709. So these are all due to basically just me showing up, being present, and taking initiative. Additionally, Brigade Sergeant Major, who's kind of like, I guess I would kind of be like Mike for the Army. In status. Also, I was awarded the Exceptional Leadership coin for that, for some of the stuff that I did in 2009. Additionally, well, I have a master's in educational leadership because I'm a teacher by trade. So I used to teach high school science up until last year even. I was a high school science teacher, so I used to teach like little 12-year-olds to like big 17-year-olds. So that was a pretty enjoyable experience for the most part, until it wasn't. Having left Afghanistan and then jumping back into a teacher role, yeah, you can probably get your head around the fact that the two worlds don't really mesh up all that well. So the teacher side of me started to kind of wane, and I needed something more, and lo and behold, I'm here now talking in front of everybody at Dominos Canada. This is awesome. This would not have been on my radar about a year and a half ago. And I'm a husband, dad, and a relatively successful beet farmer. If you want to talk beets, I'm your local Dwight Schrute, all right? Love the beets. Bears eat beets. And I just put them in the ground before I come in here. I made sure, I told my wife, I'm like, you better water these, right? She's like, yeah, honey. I'm like, no. Like, I rarely give you orders. These need to be watered, so we're tracking. Like Steve mentioned, we touched base because we had a mutual connection with respect to the fact that we're authors. So I just written a book called The Nimble Warrior. And I was just wondering how to actually get it out there and publish it and what the process was. And our mutual friend, Tim, was like, oh, you need to talk to Steve. And so we kind of hit it off, and like our bromance is like slowly growing. And like he was on my podcast. We had a great time. You should check it out, which is my next point. The Hard to Kill podcast is something that I've been operating now for the last 3 months. And actually, Steve was the last guest on the podcast. So you can just type in Hard to Kill podcast in your browser and check it out if you haven't already. And lastly, I run my own company, so I'm a personal trainer. I do online remote coaching for what I call the sheepdog community, but that includes military veterans, police, and EMS professionals. So I encompass them all in my training plans, and they're the Hard to Kill training plans that I run for that niche. So that's a little bit about me. Now, I have a few expectations for you for this presentation. And one is engagement. Being a former teacher, I feed off of it, okay? So let's start with the first engagement test. How many people here are excited for lunch? Hands up. Yeah, okay, that's an easy win. All right. If you guys are really fired up about lunch, can I get a hell yeah? Hell yeah! All right. Oh man, that was a lot easier than I thought. All right, cool. Now, I'm going to intersperse a little bit of this throughout the presentation because I want to make sure that you guys stay engaged. If you guys have questions, okay, don't be shy. Make sure to take a note of them. I was going to have a really fancy kind of Google slide thing where you know what, when things get complicated, they fail. Okay? There's going to be question and answer periods, and I'd love for you guys to participate by just asking questions and raising your hand. So that's my expectation for you, and I'll do my best to answer the questions when they arise. Okay, do we have any questions? Okay, not so far. Okay, good. So for today, we have a learning outcome. Essentially, I want everybody here to leave as a leader that's at least 1% better than they were when they came into this room. And additionally, I've come up with my 3 basic principles of Army leadership. These are like the starter pack. There's a lot more, but if we can leave with the starter pack and remember them, we're awesome. And the way we're going to confirm that is hopefully we have enough time at the end. Hopefully I don't bust my time because I really like talking about myself. We're going to do a little Kahoot quiz. So if you guys have kids in school, you guys may know what this is. It's going to be a little bit of fun stuff at the end, so let's hope we get there. Okay. So the presentation that I am going to be giving today is broken down into 4 sections. So if you guys are really starting to hurt and you're out a bit too late and you're like, oh man, he's only at part 2. Oh, I got 2 more parts to go. Well, at least you know. Okay, at least you know. Okay, so that's the point. That's the teacher's side coming out. So part 1. Here we go. I have just basically a question for you before I even start, and that's, I want you, or what is leadership to you? So I'll give you just about 10-15 seconds. If you want to close your eyes, get into the zone, think about someone or some experience that embodies leadership. You know, it could be, if you're a history nerd, you know, Julius Caesar conquering the Gauls. Or it could be as simple as, you know, Michael Scott running the office in Scranton. Whatever you say, we got an office fan. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. So that's 2 office references so far. So I'm going to keep them coming. So just take a few seconds and just think about it. Okay, what is leadership for you? If you come up with a definition, that's awesome too. Okay. Would anybody like to share their definition? Oh, yes, name. Arif, yes?
In my opinion, I think
Lead a group of people in the same direction. Arif, you know what, buddy? Here you go. For being such a good sport, boom. You get a reward. Yes. Name, please. I'm in pre. Go ahead.
I think leadership is when you can lead by example.
Lead.
You cannot lead until you actually do what you're trying to get everybody else to do that. You have to lead by example.
Awesome. Love it. Lead by example. This one's coming in hot. There we go. Get over that min-pre. Hence the reason I've learned by doing this with little kids not to use heavy, large objects. They tend to cause concussions, and so I've learned through my years to take her easy and just use 2. Okay, take one more. It's easier in the front for me, guys. Sorry. It's not because I don't like you. Just it's not going to go the distance. Yes. Jack.
just inspiring others to be better, to be in your situation.
Inspiring others to be better. Love it. All great answers, guys. All great answers. I'm going to give you guys some textbook stuff. So we hit it basically right on the head. Okay, it's the art of influencing human behavior so as to accomplish a mission in the manner so desired by the leader. This is how it's defined for the Canadian Armed Forces. How I define it is basically the art of getting her done as a team. Okay, so we all got it, guys. Okay, I'm going to go. We're good. Right, we're good? Lunchtime? You guys are all fired up already? Okay, so now we got the definition down pat. We're going to look at some examples. So don't get the wrong impression that I'm trying to put down managers. It's really easy to get that impression if you know who Bill Lumberg is. All right, okay, so I think that should be mandatory for anybody in a corporate space to have to watch Office Space. It's like my favorite movie, I love it. I've never really been corporate, maybe because I watch Office Space too much and I was like, oh, I don't want to deal with the paper jam. So let's go over just a few things with respects to the difference between a leader and a manager. So commonly these are confused because they're two sides of the same coin. When you have a leadership role, there are a few things that differentiate you from a manager. I've written down a bunch of them there, and you can read them as they go through. Essentially, leaders take command and they make change happen. Okay, this is different from a manager who is very well suited to manage a process that has already been established. Okay, so some of you guys are probably managers. So just hands up, how many people here are managers? Managers, pretty much everybody. Okay, now put your hands down. How many of you are leaders? Oh, okay, all right, okay. All right. So that's an important question to ask yourself. Not everybody is going to be well suited to be in that leadership role. But additionally, not everybody is going to be suited to be in that managerial role. That's me. Put me in a managerial role, strictly managerial, and I languish, man. I can't do it. I'm not detail-oriented. As soon as I get a process, I'm like, cool, how can we change it? It's like, no, Dave, this is what we're dealing with. It's like, yeah, but there's other ways we can fix this. Can we? Dave, just do what you got to do. Shut up, go in your office, get it done. Okay, so a good little soldier, I'll go back and do it. So there's an important distinction in the Army. I'm going to speak from an Army context. I forgot to ask, are there any veterans in the audience right now? Yeah, all right on. Okay, Army, Air Force, Navy. Yeah, buddy, all right. Now we can talk. We can have some beers after, all right. Get some serious drinks, all right, okay. So there's the differences that exist within the Canadian Armed Forces, and I'm going to speak from an Army infantry standpoint, is that you have two different categories of soldiers. You have the non-commissioned members, and you have the officers, okay, or the commissioned officers. The differences between the two I'd like to compare for a non-military audience is imagine you have a building site, or I'll try to do my best to do a Dominos Pizza reference, but I'm going to stick to a building site. So we're trying to build a new building, let's say a new Dominos Pizza chain. You have the people on the ground that are going to do the actual work. Okay, they're the laborers, right? They're the masons, right? They're the contractors. You have a foreman on the ground as well, who's managing all of that. But then you have the engineers and the architects. Okay, so the people on the ground, they would be the non-commissioned members. They're the ones that are getting dirty, doing the work, executing. The executives or the officers are the ones making the plans. So they're the ones that are putting together the architectural plans, making sure that code is respected, looking at long-term vision, is this building in a suitable location based on demographics, etc. That's not what the people on the ground are worried about. Okay, so with those two, they need to mesh. So the officers need to listen to the people on the ground because the people on the ground are actually going to do the work. And they might say, this isn't going to work, sir. Like, I'll be honest, like your plan is cracked. Like it is dumb. And that's fine. And that was my job for a very long time. I was the non-commissioned member, so I was a sergeant, that would have an officer who was usually 10 years younger than me, no experience, being like, oh, Sergeant, I think we're going to go, like, no, we're not. That's not what we're going to do. That doesn't make any sense because I have the experience. However, the officer is the one that's able to actually command me to do something, and that's the way it works. However, there was, in the infantry, you do get the position of section commander. So it's the one time that a manager gets a command position, and you have a team of 10 men. So that's where I really learned how to be a really good leader, well, in my opinion anyways, through commanding a small team. And that's where you actually get to execute on orders. And that alone puts you in a totally different headspace. Okay, so are we clear on how basically the two different things work? So a lot of my career was spent as a manager. However, I did eventually become an officer. So I know the best of both worlds, and I know I was a lot better in the leadership role, so in the officer role, than as the manager side of things. So like ordering food, ordering bullets, ordering, you name it, stoves, ration packs, you name it. Okay, that's what a manager holds on to, but the officers end up executing and developing the plan. So a few key points, and the main one I want to focus on here is that on the side of the leader, it's never about the role, it's always about the goal. So if that's a mantra that you want to kind of beat into your head, it's never about the role, it's always about the goal. That's what a leader is really focused on, okay? Especially in the military, that is primordial. The individual that I picked to act as my leadership example is Captain Dick Winters. So if anybody is a Band of Brothers fan, this HBO series, huge, yeah, we got some thumbs up, awesome, yeah. You'll know who I'm talking about. So member of the 506 Parachute Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division, stormed the beaches at Normandy, landed on D-Day, Purple Heart recipient, Bronze Star recipient, you name it. In that story, we get to really understand what a leader can do, and how respected and how much he can actually get done. So if you haven't seen it, for me, it was a really important, I read the book and I watched the series. It was an important reference for me to refer to as a leader. And it's in movie format, so you get the whole hero thing that's associated with it, but you got to see the nitty-gritty of how somebody like Captain Dick Winters actually outlined his process and managed to get things done, like beating the Nazis. So if you look at the manager side of things, I'm only putting in Bill Lundberg, like I said, because it's one of my favorite movies. I was a manager for a very long time as well. But managers have a really keen eye for process and work well inside of it. So I really recommend, if you haven't done it yet, how many people here have heard of an MBTI, the Myers-Briggs personality profile test? Yeah, so a handful of people. They're free online, they're cute. Don't put too much stock in it, but it's a good place to start. I strongly recommend that you take a look at it. If you're looking to progress through your organization, it was really eye-opening for me because I had a feeling that I wasn't going to be a good manager, but I did the test and I have a very extroverted personality. I don't know, did you guys realize? Do I seem extroverted? Yeah, I seem extroverted, okay. Extroverts tend to do really well in leadership roles, but not exclusively. There can be introverted leaders, of course. But it made it very clear that I will not be happy in a managerial role or in a role that I don't have input. So if I can't talk to somebody and be like, yeah, this isn't going to make sense, I think we should change it and do this, it's going to be hard for me to stay in that role. And that was teaching for me. Teaching was, I was stuck in a classroom. Nobody expected me to put any input into the organization, and when I did, they didn't listen. So that was hard for me because I came from an organization that always listened, more or less. Okay, so I strongly recommend MBTI. Check it out. You can do it on your phones, and then you can get your profile. And once you have your profile, it'll give you a better idea of where you're going, personality-wise, with respects to leadership or management. Okay, because if you're very detail-focused, it might be hard to be a leader, but I'm not saying you're now excluded from it. But it's just good to know. Okay, so what type of leader do you aspire to be, or are you right now? This comes with a lot of practice. Leadership is a skill like any other skill. The skill set of leadership requires a ton of other skills to come together. Communication, okay, that's pretty much foremost, but also things like empathy. Do you have ability to connect with somebody? Right? These are the little things that really help when developing your leadership profile or your leadership style. When I started out as a leader, I shouldn't say all my role models, but most of them, because you leave from a world where you're on course as a recruit, where you're being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, all day, every day. I'm like, oh, that's how you be a leader. So immediately when I got my first leadership role when I was 20 years old, I was just blasting guys, like right in their face, like, why aren't you doing your boots? Why aren't you getting your kit ready? And my section was like, whoa, Dave, dude, we were just talking like 20 minutes ago. You're cool. What's going on? Like, are you mental? And I was like, huh. I was like, huh. I'm not mental. It's just the way it is. I got to get you motivated. It's like, no, if you tell me to get my boots right, I'll get my boots. I'm like, huh. So I started thinking and reflecting. And I remember there was one moment, we used to do parades, and I should qualify that. Parades in the military are not like Snoopy, like flying like around with like drum bands and stuff like that. We're marching in the streets of Ottawa. You may have seen it if you've been to Ottawa. And the lead up to that, we have to practice. And I remember I had my own group of guys. I was a junior leader. And one guy just wasn't like swinging his arm properly. And I went like full metal jacket on him. If you guys know the reference, I was the drill sergeant just in his face like, why aren't you getting that arm up, son? And I just started swearing and spitting. And a more senior guy came over and he's like, hey, Dave, you think that's the right approach? I was like, well, what other approach is there? He's like, I don't know. Can you just say, hey, dude, get your arm up? I was like, good point. I'll use that next time. And it really had an effect on me because I still remember that was like 13 years ago. And all it was just like, dude, really? I was like, okay, right on. So I accepted that as a very valid criticism, and I changed my I just changed my approach because that's not who I am. I'm not a yeller. I felt like I was lying when I was doing that kind of stuff. And hence the reason why the nature or the title of my presentation, part of it says speak calmly. That's something that I embodied because I do usually speak calmly. I don't yell, only in rare circumstances. And that had an effect on my leadership style. So there are a few different types of leadership styles. The first one is delegative, or what we call laissez-faire. Now, laissez-faire leadership, in the Army, it was very, very frowned upon. Giving a bunch of soldiers just free rein to just give them a set of orders and not supervise is a failure of leadership on a lot of levels. The only way that this could possibly be effective is if you have a very experienced team that you know and trust that can actually get your orders executed. So in your context, this is something that may only happen at maybe executive level. Okay, on the ground, managing your stores, I wouldn't recommend it. And I don't, other than ordering pizzas in your stores, I don't know the day-to-day, but I can only imagine that if you were just to show up, be like, all right, guys, this is all we're doing today, and then just let them free rein, it would be like herding cats at the end of the day, probably. So that probably isn't the best way to sell pizzas. Now, autocratic leadership is exactly what I was talking about. In somebody's face, you're literally controlling every aspect of their day from start to finish. I run the show. Nobody else runs the show. And what that does is it suppresses any sort of initiative from anybody else. But there is a time and place for it. Like I said, when starting out in the military, and when I was a leader, training those individuals that were just starting out in the military, you have to be autocratic. It's dangerous. If you don't control them from start to finish, we have guns. Within day 3, you've given some 19-year-old kid an M16 fully automatic rifle, and like, this is yours. Don't lose it, dude. Don't mess up. And it's like, oh, and I remember getting it, I was like, I've never touched a gun in my life. I'm like, oh man. And then right away, control. Has to be control. So that's where you get your autocratic. So the drill sergeant, in this case, is your autocratic leader. Democratic leadership. Oddly enough, this is something that is used in the military in very specific occasions. Namely, if you have a very experienced section or dealing with the special forces teams, before going out on a mission, everybody will have their say. And the reason why that is that it's extremely dangerous. And everybody's input is equally valuable, with the commander at the top making the final decision. But you come to a consensus as to what is the best idea. Now, this may or may not work in your organizations, but if something's time sensitive, this could take a really big chunk of your time out of your day, because getting consensus may not be the easiest thing, and sometimes you just have to put your foot down and be like, no, this is where we're going, this is how we're doing it. Servant leadership, this is really popular these days for whatever reason. I don't know if there's a lot more research on it, but servant leadership is basically moving the roadblocks out of your team's way so that they can actually accomplish their mission. So you're serving their purpose. So you set up the framework, and then it's like, all right, here's what I'm going to do to get things out of your way. And just, you can let them flourish. So there's very, very good results that can happen with servant leadership. And that's to say that you can always have a mix of all the different types. Because when we look now at transformational leadership, that's like the hero, right? That's like the all-encompassing president that saves the planet from alien invaders, that rallies the troops. That's Julius Caesar. That's the one that we realize changes an organization. So this transformational leadership principle is a really high aspirational goal, but it's the reason why we have corporations like Domino's. It takes transformational leaders to make a company as big as Domino's. Can anybody correct me, but are we at 500 stores in Canada for Domino's? 500? Okay, awesome. Okay, I got a little pop quiz for you guys. Hopefully somebody can answer it. Where was the first Domino's restaurant opened in Canada? Which city? There you go, all right. Good job, well done. Oh, incoming. And where was the 400th open? Oh, no.
That was me.
That, it's Keener. That's why she's sitting in the front. Yeah, in Winnipeg. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. So there you go. Transformational leaders are the ones that actually transform an organization. They manage to cultivate new leaders very, very, very well. So cultivating a new leader to move up, okay, is not an easy task. Now, I didn't grow up in corporate, so I don't know. Maybe you guys can correct me. But in the Army, we cultivate leaders to take our jobs. The reason for that is that if we're in a combat situation, if we die, the next guy in line has to take over. So it's critically important to our jobs that the next guy, and 2 guys down, know 2 roles up because they have to fill in. Now, I'm pretty sure the attrition rate in Domino's is not like being in Afghanistan. So you don't have to worry about not showing up due to some horrific cheese-based melting incident that takes out half your staff, okay? But a transformational leader will take this to heart because I'm sure everybody here that is managing their stores wants somebody to be able to take over because you probably have an aspirational goal to move up as well, and you want to see that store succeed. So therefore, investing time in your troops is a very wise investment, and hence why transformational leadership can have such a powerful effect on your organization. Okay. So that's a lot of theory. Sorry. One last bit of theory coming up. And you have to memorize this for your test at the end of the lesson. Okay? I'm going to let you guys read this for a minute or so. These are the principles that the Canadian Armed Forces uses, and even the American Armed Forces, the Marines, they're all iterations of the same thing. The 11 principles of leadership. We used to have these little cards that we had to carry around. Once we started going on our leadership track, on our leadership progression, on our courses, and you'd be asked, all right, Mauro, which leadership principle are you not fulfilling right now? And you'd be like, oh no, I'm on the spot. And you'd be like, lead by example. And that was always my go-to, because that's like a catch-all. If you're not doing your job, well, you're not leading by example. Okay, so I'll let you read that for a second. Okay, is there one that stands out, that resonates more with you? If anybody's brave enough to. Yeah, I won't be able to get you a hat, but yeah, in the middle. Set the example. Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. Yeah, set the example. Like I said, that, oh, perfect, thank you, yeah. Setting the example, everything else can fall into place nicely after setting the example. Okay? All the others are very important, don't get me wrong. But setting the example, man, if you want your guys to be hard chargers, hard workers, putting in the extra effort, well, if you're not doing that, how do you expect your team to do it? It doesn't work that way. Right? So that's from day one. That's what we make sure is drilled into us, that if you're going to show up and expect to lead a section of troops, a platoon of troops, well, you have to actually walk the walk. It's not about talking. Right? If you are a talker, it's going to show up immediately when you get on the ground, because you're not going to know what you're doing, and your troops are going to notice and they're going to lose faith in you. Okay, so lead by example is really key. So when we start out in the infantry, day one, you're expected to have a certain level of groupthink. And the harshest thing that you could call somebody is an individual. So from day one, your individuality is stripped away. And the only thing that matters is the goal and the team. And you're broken down even more into fire teams. So you have a group of 10 guys, but then you're broken down into just you and your buddy. It's called the buddy system. And it works really, really, really well. You show up from all different parts. For me, it was all different parts of Montreal. And all of a sudden, you're in this really cramped, small little room with 2 small little single beds with some guy you've never met before in your life. And it's like, all right, you're fire team partners. Enjoy. If he screws up, you screw up. If he screws up, he gets corrective training. So do you. It's like, okay, all right. So you get up in the morning, and you got to put your uniform on, obviously. There's a little bit of lint. There's a little thread kicking out. Mauro, why is your fire team partner? Why does he have a thread kicking out? You didn't want to tell him? Well, you just thought he'd get by without it? You think I wouldn't notice? Push-ups, usually. Or everybody's got change. So the punishment is that you didn't look after your buddy. So it sets it in motion. Now, one thing that you take back to your stores and to your teams is it doesn't have to be as aggressive as, okay, you're going to punish somebody for not having worn their uniform properly. But if you set up just a fire team, or you can call it the buddy system. So imagine, I don't know, Jim doesn't show up to work for whatever reason. Calls in and says, he's like, I can't make it. Okay, cool. Who's his fire team partner? Now, as a manager, as a leader, be like, hey, how's Jim doing? Let's say Megan is his fire team partner. Oh, I don't know. You don't know? How come? Oh, I don't know. Did you shoot him a text? No? Okay, well, find out. See how he's doing. See if he's all right. Just something basic as that. That sets the example that we're looking out for each other. When you know that somebody's looking out for you, okay, you're less likely to, be absentee, and you're more likely to be engaged. Okay? And you're more likely to feel like you're part of a team. Okay? Simple little things can go a really long way. Okay, so I broke it down into my starter pack, like I said at the beginning. So pay attention to this, because these are the 3 basic principles that we're going to go over at the end. Lead by example. Straightforward enough. Take care of your troops. Okay, for you guys, you have teams. It doesn't mean coddle them. It means make sure that they have goals that they can achieve, but also, okay, that you set your expectations. A lot of people think that, if I want to take care of somebody, I have to be like, hey man, is everything okay? Did you have a rough day? You can ask that, but it doesn't mean you have to be like all touchy-feely and give them hugs. No. Make sure that they're doing all right at their job. Are they experiencing any difficulties? What is it that's not working? Now, that might be hard for some of you because ego is the enemy, right? Might be like, well, maybe you're the issue. Maybe they're not going to say, okay? That is something that is really apparent when people stop talking to you. And I'm going to have a really good quote that's going to come up by Colin Powell that I hope you guys take to heart. You want your teams interacting with you. You want your teams interacting with themselves. And taking care of your troops, even just a little bit, will go a long way, because when people feel like their boss cares, it means that the work becomes a lot easier. And lastly, know your shit. Okay? I can't exemplify enough that if you're lost in the sauce and somebody's coming to you with problems, because you're a problem magnet, you can't just stand there and be like, It's not going to work, man. Sort your shit out. Get technically proficient if you have to. Read. Talk to other people that aren't your actual employees to get yourself sorted out. But you need to know your shit. Now, that comes with one caveat. You can't know everything. So, one important thing to be able to learn how to say is, I don't know, I'll get back to you. Can we all say that together? I don't know, I'll get back to you. Okay, now, as a leader, After you say that, what should you do? Yeah, get back to them. I mean, it seems easy, but you'd be surprised how many times, oh, yeah, Maury, you know what? Yeah, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. It's like, hey, sir, you didn't get back to me. Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Okay, so that means you show you care. That means they know you're taking care of them. Okay, so what are some of the issues that come up with a lack of leadership? Well, there's some stats there. I'll get out of the way. So people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses. I think most of you probably heard that. But some of the stats that are relatively surprising is that based on a worldwide study, 85% of worldwide employees don't feel engaged at work. Whew. Ça va mal à shop. That is not a good thing, okay? Companies with high engagement, okay, are 20% more productive and 21% more productive. That's from a Gallup survey. So if we're just talking on, getting that bottom line sorted out, okay, being a leader that is actually getting their teams engaged in what they're doing, okay, the numbers are there. Okay, so actively pursue a culture of teamwork and work on your leadership skills, and you will have a much better team. Okay, that will be much more productive. Okay. So here, just a quick quote. Jocko Willink, if you guys are interested in any sort of leadership-based training or knowledge, okay, he is a Navy SEAL, former Navy SEAL commander. He's a great reference and somebody I always read and listen to his podcast as well. That's a really good start. He talks about the dichotomy of leadership. Okay? You can be super autocratic and just grind your team into dust, and that gets some results, but you also have to have that soft side as well, okay, that can help somebody that doesn't respond well to that autocratic side, okay? It's a give and take, okay? Leadership is not just being on one track and just following that one track. You have to constantly adapt, and hence the dichotomy. And lastly, Lao Tzu. A leader is best when people barely know he exists. When his work is done, his aim fulfilled, they will say, we did it ourselves. Dean, where are you? Dean. This is what we were talking about last night, okay? Do your work, set the example, set the expectations, okay? Once the team feels that they've done it, oh man, that's such a good feeling. Especially when you're the leader, and it's like, wow, that actually worked? Holy shit. You're like an all-star. You're like, man, I want to keep on doing this, and it's addictive, okay? Once you find that winning formula. Okay, so some questions if we have. Okay. Do we have any questions from the crowd before we move on? Okay. So some questions to ask yourself. Are leaders born or is it an acquired skill? I noticed I made a number error there. Are leaders born as an acquired skill? What characteristics of a leader makes you more likely to follow them? And what characteristics of a leader makes you resent them? So that's something that when I was doing this with my wife, I was going over my presentation, she's like, yeah, there's this one supervisor. And I was like, okay, whoa, calm down. And I immediately saw the emotional response. And I'm sure everybody here has that same emotional response to a leader that was awful. We've all had a terrible leader at some point. But use that as a learning experience. Don't be that person, okay? We know what it's like to have a bad leader, so take that to heart. And how often do you practice your leadership skills? That's something to keep in mind as well. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to practice nearly as much as I used to. I don't have teams as big as I used to. I have a small team of 2, I'm not even going to call them employees because they're not on payroll. I just pay them a commission for my business for now because I'm just starting out. A team nonetheless, which I hope to grow and grow and grow. But if you have nice big teams, get in there, do the dirty work, get a lot of practice, and constantly be self-improving. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some fun stuff. Because the last stuff wasn't fun, right? Okay, there we go. We're fired up. Okay, so leadership lessons. So I'm going to do kind of a broad stroke as to what I did in the Canadian Armed Forces. I started in 2001, 19. As of day 1, day 2, I realized, man, I really, really enjoy what I'm doing right now. I never was really that great at sports. I'd never really pushed myself in anything. I did well in school without much effort. So when I got to the infantry, it was that first challenging moment that I was like, oh, it's like, man, this is freaking awesome. Like, I think I'm gonna do well at this. And it just, like, energy meter. And then my section commanders and the officers were kind of like taking notice of me because I was able to do what I needed to do. And I just looked at it like a big game of Simon Says. Tell me to do something, I'll do it. If you don't tell me to do something, I won't do it. And then slowly got the hang of it. And I remember within like the first week, I was talking with the officer in charge of the course, and they just do like a basic interview to make sure you're not like cracking and going mental, right? Because some people do, they can't handle it. Like the first few days, you crack. It's like, I can't do this, this isn't for me. Okay, cool, you're up. So he's like, Maura, how you enjoying it? And I said, sir, I love this shit. And he's like, He's like, right on, soldier. He's like, you're going to do well in the infantry, I think. He's like, masochists love being in the infantry. I was like, yep, I think that's me. And so from then on, it was just one success after another. I ended up being top candidate. And then I was riding high. I was like, oh, this is what I'm good at. Oh, okay, finally, I found something I'm really good at. And I took leadership roles from that point on. So you're a kid and you're all of a sudden in charge of a section because nobody's showing up anymore. All your senior leadership, they've either left or they have wives and kids and they're not showing up to train anymore. So you're this 20-year-old kid and now they're asking you to sign for like $15,000 worth of equipment. And you're like, yeah, sure, no problem. And that's how it starts. And by 2004, by 2003, I was on my leadership courses. So leadership in the Army is very well defined. You need to go through a series of courses in order to get your qualification and your rank. And the first one was easy peasy. A lot of theory, learning how to teach, and hence why I became a teacher, because I loved it in the Army. And then after that, it was just one success after another until you get into the field. So that was the picture at the top there in 2004. It was probably one of the most miserable moments of my life captured in photo. And that's me there on the far left. I'm hating life. It's been an entire week at this point of just living in the swamps, getting rained on, digging holes, no sleep, just misery 100%. But it was made worse by really, really bad leaders to the point where I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay on this course because there was just rampant abuses that were going on course for the sake of being abusive. And so I learned right there that this isn't the type of leader I want to be. I did a course the year after, which was the exact opposite. Most of these guys that just got back from Afghanistan, they just gave us the straight dope. It was hard, but it wasn't abusive. And I was like, oh, okay, they want us to learn. That was the big difference, okay? You need to make sure that you don't just give guys work for the sake of work, that they actually have a lesson that can be learned. Bottom left here, this was my first real test of leadership. It's kind of dark because, well, obviously we operate in the night. That's me on the top left again. I actually got a section and I had to plan our reconnaissance operation in Florida as an advance party. So I showed up, I laid the ground, and then the guys showed up about 5 days later, and then we were able to go in place. And so we had this big operation with about 120 soldiers that we were responsible to get to the position in order to do an attack. It wasn't easy. I'd like to say that I saved two of my buddies' lives on that exercise. One because he got bit by a brown recluse spider and he wasn't going to go to the medics. And I was like, no, you're going because you're going to die. He's like, no, I'm not. And so I had to physically bring him to the medics and they got him his antibiotics. And my other buddy had a tick burrowed into his right butt cheek that I had to pick out for him. So that's my buddy Simon on the bottom right. So we're pretty tight. But overall, awesome experience and really kind of gave me a lot more confidence. And then top right, now I wish I had the mantra that Mike was talking about like 10 years ago when I was in Ottawa. Don't quit, don't get fired. Shit, man, I got fired. It sucked. The reason why that picture is all covered in writing is because this was like my camp counselor moment. It's not something that happens in the Army very often. I got fired from a job because I told my sergeant major where he could stuff it. If you do that, you're going to get fired. I was looking out for my guys. We had done far too much, and people were getting injured, and we're just being told to do more and more and more. I said, no, we're not doing that anymore. He's like, yeah, you are. I said, no, we're not, and you can go shove it. And he's like, okay, you can go home. I was like, all right, sounds good. So when I left, I said my goodbyes to the guys, and it was great. And then I'm home, back in Montreal, and I get this parcel, and it's a massive picture, this one, in a frame, and then this nice big picture with everybody signing a whole bunch of nice things on it. And it was just something that I wasn't expecting because they really appreciated what I had to bring that summer, and because that they had a great summer, and that's something that I keep up in my house. Even though I got fired, it was still a very good experience. And then lastly, on the bottom, in Afghanistan, I like to consider myself I was like the Department of Education for a short period of time in my district. And it wasn't something I had to do, but it's something that I needed to do. And the Afghan government didn't have any control of education at that point. So the school that we were attached to, so I had a small little outpost, and there was an actual school that was attached to it. I, being a teacher, naturally gravitated to getting this thing up and running. So I would go in and make sure that they had their desks. I would go in and make sure that they had their supplies. I would get stuff from Canada sent over. I coordinated with their education minister to get at least some teacher training started. I would teach them English whenever I got a chance. I would teach the kids English whenever I got a chance. So the point of this is all to say that if you see something that needs to get done, a leader will step in and say, this is what I'm doing, and coordinate the effort. And that's definitely my most rewarding experience of my life, which was opening up not just this one school in Bolande, but 2 other schools in the same district. So that was something that really stuck with me, and something that I hope to replicate in my life moving forward. So what are some lessons learned? Yeah, you guys are probably getting a picture of my humor by now. I had a really, really good platoon commander early on in my career. He was really calm. He always had the right answer. And he said, Dave, if somebody asks you your opinion and they don't have a pen and paper, they don't care about your opinion. I was like, whoa, it's pretty harsh. He's like, no. He's like, you have to see them write it down. A leader will have a million different things going on in his head or her head at any given moment. If they really care, they're going to action it. And you can only action it if there's either, and today it could be a voice message or something like that, but there needs to be some sort of record of what your complaint was or your concern was in order to take action on it. So that's something I really took to heart. Hence the reason why my presentation revolves around my clipboard. Okay, clipboard leadership. So this is my trusty clipboard that has been to every deployment, every exercise I've ever been on. I don't know what to do without this thing. It's got all kinds of cool stuff in it, like really cool stuff in it too. I keep all kinds of neat little tricks and little candies and stuff like that. But more importantly, I can take down somebody's complaint. I'm still not there where I film myself and be like, oh, this individual had this complaint. I'm not there yet. I'm born in the 80s. I still don't use my phone effectively. Okay, so leaders eat last. Simon Sinek talked about this. He spent time with the military unit. This is just to imply that you need to ensure that your team is taken care of before you take care of yourself. That's an important concept in the military. I don't know what you guys could do in this case. Maybe all the employees get bonuses for executives. Does that sound about right? No? Boo. Okay, I get it. Leaders need to know one specific detail about everyone in their charge. How I recommend you guys do it, start just a list. You don't have to even send somebody something, but if they say something interesting, like, oh, I have a cat, cool, what's the cat's name? Okay, and then go back and write it down. If you know one little thing about somebody, they automatically think that you care so much about them that they will go the extra mile no matter what. So in my case, it was usually I'd do inspection every morning, make sure everybody was good to go, and then one person that day I would single out and be like, hey, how's your cat Mittens? And they'd be like, oh, Sergeant, my cat's doing really well. I'm like, good, cool, thanks. And then just move on. And they're like, wow, this guy's on the ball. I just remembered one thing, okay? I had 30 individuals to remember. You can't remember it all, but one thing at a time goes a long way. Leaders don't bring a problem without a solution. This is really important. Basically, only bitch up, don't bitch down. If you're complaining about something to your subordinates or the people that are in your team that you're actually leading or commanding, that's going to be a problem because that's going to erode morale. Don't do it. They have their own problems that you've imposed on them. Okay? They don't need to hear the ones that are coming from corporate. Okay? That's really important. I see it all the time. When I was teaching, I heard it all the time. Like, I don't care about your problems with the government right now. I need like supplies in my classroom. Can we get that sorted? I'm working too much. I'm going to burn out. Can you fix that? I don't want to know about those other things. Okay. Leaders embrace every curveball as a learning experience. Really important lesson. And leaders should always speak calmly, look confident, and carry clipboard. Okay. It's an analogy, guys. You don't have to get a clipboard like that. Okay. I hope we're all tracking. Okay. This is the quote I wanted to point out. Leadership is about solving problems. Okay? The day soldiers stop bringing you their problems is the day you have stopped leading them. They have either lost confidence that you can help or concluded you do not care. Either case is a failure of leadership. That's from Colin Powell, former Secretary of Defense, former general in the American Army, and has a lot to say about leadership. And this is something that I would tattoo on my chest if I wasn't a dad and have, respect for my body, I guess. Put it that way. Okay. Questions? Yes?
What made you want to join an alternate?
I wanted to shoot guns and throw grenades. Yeah. I had no bigger aspirations other than it was a good salary. I was lifeguarding at the time. And then I also wanted to shoot guns and throw grenades. And hopefully that would translate into getting a girlfriend. I was like, come on. Never really worked. Didn't work. No, my wife didn't care less. Yeah, go ahead.
What's your favorite MRE?
My famous.
Favorite MRE?
Oh, American or Canadian? It'd have to be the salmon. Big fan of the salmon. Okay. Questions are just for reflection. How often do you consider morale in your team workplace? What are some things you do to project confidence? Okay, so the last part is I singled out a specific incident that was really crucial to my leadership development, and this is what I call the Cambrian Patrol. So again, to the details of the Cambrian Patrol, it's a competition. It's not live. Okay? It's an exercise in Wales. It is NATO's premier patrolling competition. It required 2 years of planning with my buddy Simon, who I picked the tick out of his butt. So me and him, we planned for 2 years. They said, it'll never happen. This is our leadership. We'll never get financing. The brigade will never authorize you guys to go. You guys will never be able to complete it. So I said, okay, roger that, track it. We're going to keep on working though. And we put together our team, and for 2 years we trained hard. Fitness, theory lessons, you name it. We put it together. Tons of man hours, but also tons of volunteer hours. This was something that we were driven to do because it was hard. And we found the guys in our unit that were equally as driven to do it as well because we set the bar really high. Literally, it had never been done just by one regiment, one reserve regiment in Canada, let alone in Montreal. So this was something that we really took to heart. It's about 60 kilometers of marching in the worst terrain I've ever been in my life. So we show up, everything's good to go. I'm like, wow, we actually made it. This is amazing. We're going to go do it. And every step, I'm like, wow, we're actually doing this. H hours is what we call the time that it's the time that we start something. H hour minus one. H hour minus 1 day. We're messing around. We're guys. We're having fun. Guess what happens? I hurt my back. Okay, don't tell anybody. I'm the patrol commander. Can't sleep that night because I'm just like, I'm spinning. Like, what am I going to do? We didn't come all this way to not compete. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to stuff myself full of Advil. We're going to get going. Done. Driver's driving us. We get lost. The signs are in Welsh. Oh, the signs are in Welsh. Nobody told us the signs are in Welsh. Don't read Welsh. So we didn't know where to go. So that's the next hurdle we hit. Start to write my orders. I forgot my map trace. So I go to give my orders, and the staff is there. It's like, where's your map trace? I was like, yeah, I don't have it. They're like, okay. So they don't know where we're going to end up because they use that map trace to figure out our position. Things aren't going well. We get dropped off in our location. We get off the trucks. I go to put my hip belt on to absorb about 80 pounds of weight that I have in my backpack. Pull my strap. Pow, gone. My buddy puts on his rucksack, goes to pull in the straps. It turns into like a Gordian knot. I've never seen it before in my life. Don't know how that happened. Things are starting to fall apart really fast, and we haven't even started our first ascent up the hill. So we finally get moving. We finally get going. We get about 5 kilometers in. My buddy goes, ah! I'm like, John, what's up? My knee. Oh, man, your knee. What's the matter? He's like, it's not doing so well. So I break up the best shaman technique I've ever had in my life. I warm up my hands. I go up to his knee, and I just start messing around in there. I'm like, we're finishing this, buddy. I don't care how we're going to do it. So he's like, okay, well, and I start stuffing him with Advils. I'm like, we're getting this done. And we start walking again. We start walking, and we're getting more and more tired. Our bags are getting heavier and heavier. We're getting more and more water on the bags. The bags are absorbing water. What the hell? Our bags are absorbing water? We got new bags 3 weeks before we were supposed to deploy. We didn't test them. We just figured, yeah, they're good to go. Yeah, they're not. Guess what? The rucksacks absorb water. We've now got 20 pounds of extra water on our backs. Not good. We're moving at around 100 pounds of weight on everybody's backs. Up steep terrain like this, it's not going so well. We go to take a curve, looking at my map. I'm not sure. I talk to my second in command. Sam, I don't know where I'm going, buddy. Should I take this turn? Yeah, looks good, buddy. Okay. We take the turn. 2-hour detour. Uphill. Not a good idea. Sort ourselves out. Get to the next location. Realize, oh crap, we're way too far away. We need to get closer, but we need to go through the woods. I split the team up to make it faster. Bad idea. My team gets lost. We're trying to figure out a way back. I go, buddy, talking to my buddy Bob, get us out of here, man. I'm lost. He's like, what do you mean you're lost? I'm like, I know, I'm lost. He's like, all right, I'll figure it out. He figures it out. We get back. We link back up. Oh, sweet. We take off again. I start realizing my guys aren't doing nearly as well as I am. They're not responding. We've been 24 hours now walking, and they're not in the game anymore. Their heads are gone. Sam, my second in command, is given an order to go walk this way. He goes, roger that, and starts walking that way. Uh-oh. Okay. We get to a point, and we stop. I see guys are shivering badly. They're not responding to what I'm saying. I make the call. Guys, we're shutting down for 3 hours. We're pulling out our sleeping bags. We're lighting up stoves. I'm making a command decision, taking a time out. We're very strict on time. We probably won't end up finishing the patrol now. But I had to make that call. I wasn't willing to put my guys' safety at risk for a training exercise that we trained so hard for the sake of getting to the finish line. Their health wasn't worth that. So I made that command decision. We got to the next waypoint, but they called the quits on us. The staff said, no, you're too far behind. This is after we had to go swim through a river as well. Okay, so all this to say is that all that planning, all that execution didn't end up with mission success. Hence the reason why I wanted to go over it, because there's a lot of lessons learned. So I can't run the show alone. That's really important. Always train your second in command and those below you to do your job. If I had to train Sam better, he would have been able to say, no, don't go that way, man. You're off the mark. You need to go this way. He would have been able to handle, okay, the fatigue and the heavy rucksacks a lot better, because I would have forced them to be better. So that's on me. Paying attention to your team is really crucial too. I saw that guys were not responding. That's not a good sign. I shut her down, even though I knew it was going to result in a mission failure. Fail to plan, plan to fail. Always go in with a solid plan. We didn't plan our training plan well enough in order to be able to accommodate heavy rucksacks. We should have. That was a failure on my part and our team's part. Getting lost isn't an option. You have to rely on some people in order to get you out of a jam. Don't let ego get yourself even more into a hole. That's why I got my buddy Bob to get us out. Before implementing something new, try it at least once. Don't go in blind. And lastly, admit your mistakes and learn from them. Okay, I wish I could do this over again. I wish, but it's not going to happen. Okay? So what I'm doing now is reflecting and sharing, and that's the way that I can have a positive impact from my experience. So in summary, leadership and management are two different sides of the same coin. As we learned between the difference between Dick Winters and Bill Lumberg, leadership is the art of influencing human behavior. Okay? So as to accomplish the mission in the manner so desired by a leader, there's a lot of different styles as well. Don't get hung up on just one. You need to bring them all together and practice them as they come up. Learn from your mistakes. Rely on your team and train them to take over your role. Lead by example. Take care of your troops and know your shit. And lastly, get a clipboard. All right. So guys, thanks so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, we won't have enough time to do the quiz. Sorry. But I can post it if there's a chance to be able to post. Well, I'll talk to Steve, see if that's possible. And just before I wrap up, my company does do leadership training, specifically building teams. We have decades worth of experience building teams to ensure that group cohesion becomes really the focus point of that team. And we use a military style approach in order to do it with a lot of fun as well. If that's something that is interesting to you or any of your teams, please don't hesitate to go to davemorrow.net/leadership coaching and drop me a line. You can also get your hands on a free document on 3 pro tips to building your teams. And you can download that from my site as well. Additionally, check out the podcast, like I mentioned earlier, the Hard to Kill podcast. That's HRD. Number 2, Kill podcast for all kinds of stuff, not just for the military. We talk about a whole bunch of different things on mindset and coaching as well. And I have to plug my book as well, which is The Nimble Warrior, which I have right here. It is now available on Amazon. You can get it on Kindle as well. You can get it on iTunes. Just type in The Nimble Warrior, and you can get yourself a copy. Don't forget, people that are healthy are a lot more productive. Okay? One of the number 1 injuries for North Americans is a back injury, just like me. Backs hurt, they're not going to be productive. They're not going to be able to be on the floor and drive those cars. So you might want to pick up one of these books, and I go through the process of how I went from a crippling back injury to being able to stand and do Spartan races and compete in CrossFit. So guys, I really appreciate your time. Go out there, be the leaders you can be, and get those clipboards.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find out more about training, nutrition, and mindset at davemorrow.net. Be sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram at Dave Morrow PT. And don't forget, strong people are hard to kill.